I love the fact that I can do some long endurance runs with Vauban. He's a special frame when we talk about survival missions, as he can just sit in one safe corner, waiting for enemies to get sucked into his vortex, then gets murdered by whatever you hold in your hand. The beauty of vortex pulling enemies is not only that they get grouped in one spot, but they also get knocked down in the process, leaving them open to finisher damage. In fact, I had lots of dumb fun with a Vauban Vortex, Pox, and the Jat Kitag modded with both Condition Overload and Vulcan Blitz in the past. It was hilariously fun bringing down the hammer to those incapacitated enemies inside the vortex. That was a fun old meta, but if you want to do some serious work with Vauban in endurance runs, then you must try out the combination of Pox, Redeemer Prime, and a vortex build. The Redeemer Prime just melts everything inside the vortex, as all enemies trapped in your black hole takes the full damage of every gas tick coming from your Redeemer Prime. Not to mention that Vortex does apply magnetic damage to enemies caught by it, plus you can add electric with your Tesla, and then radiation with your Concuss Mine, increasing the damage that you inflict when you have Condition Overload on your Redeemer Prime. It's really a destructive combo, and this is why I love Vauban so much at his current state. Modding a Vortex Vauban is quite easy. It doesn't need lots of duration, nor the perpetual vortex augment. All it needs is a lot of efficiency, plus a huge amount of range to be effective. I must admit, I was guilty of using a full duration vortex in the past, but, right after some countless tests in Void Survivals, I find it hard to keep it active, especially if there are nullifiers around. Max efficiency lets me cast his other abilities whenever I need to, like for example, I can cast Bastille to block the other incoming enemies, or I could simply place some Drip Laser, or Bounce Mine to give me time to react, or I could simply place another vortex in a spot wherein other enemies can't be reached by the nullifier. While the range part is pretty obvious, it widens the pull radius of my vortex ability, which is pretty important if you are playing solo. In most cases wherein you are playing with a team, you can always try the duration plus perpetual vortex build, as you can team up with frames like Loki, that can disarm enemies, leaving them no choice but to commit suicide on Vauban's vortex. But for solo plays, you must have the option to cast something else when you are in deep waters. That is why I choose to run max efficiency for my build. Last piece of advice I can give is, when you are not getting enough kills because enemies are not dumb enough to walk into your vortex, then you can equip the Arcane Anomaly, and simply cast it to pull enemies that are within 20 meters range. Also, Zenuric's Void Singularity does work well with Vauban's vortex, but that's not all your operator can do to help you get kills with a vortex Vauban. You can actually add Arcane Lockdown on your operator, and then pair it with the box. We're not gonna use its feature to stun targets, but what we are aiming here is to use its feature to deal 60% of an enemy's health as puncture damage. Since the damage is mitigated by armor, we need the Pox to strip them away before we can kill those 8 enemies trapped in your vortex. Yes, I admit that this is another Vortex Vauban video, with additional tricks to have some dumb fun with your 4th ability. Well, honestly, this is where Vauban excels the most, grouping enemies with his vortex, and killing them with whatever you can think of. What about a Bastille build? Don't get me wrong, Bastille is a good ability, but it has one flaw. Although it can stop enemies from getting close to you, or your defense target, it doesn't stop those enemies with guns to shoot you in the face at long range. In fact, even with a 265% range, which converts to 26.5 meters Bastille radius, enemies like this heavy gunner can still shoot even if it's 40 meters away from you. That's the biggest downside of using a Bastille Vauban. It doesn't stop incoming projectiles from passing through his 3rd ability. You might argue that you can place Bastille to a strategic location, or most probably to spawn points to block enemies, but that would require you to move and park most of the time, just to place traps from point A to point B. Vauban will exert a lot of effort, but frames like Limbo can instantly put you to shame by casting his Cataclysm. It's unfair and unjust, honestly, seeing a unique frame like Vauban being underused because there are better crowd control abilities compared to what he can offer. There are many Vauban rework ideas thrown at digital extremes. Some may want a complete overhaul on his kit, while others think that his abilities just need some decent buff to compete with other abilities similar to it, but 10 times better. In my honest opinion, I agree with those players who think that Vauban needs a different set of abilities. I mean, if we take a closer look at his abilities, all we can see are Bastille being good when enemies are unarmed, and Vortex being great in long endurance runs. but I don't find much use for both Tesla and Minelayer. The damage of Tesla, and as well as its ability to zap enemies, aren't that good. Putting it on some roller balls wouldn't change it, and it will still not be interesting honestly. Also, Minelayer may have its uses, like crowd control and armor stripping, but it's inefficient to use. Why would I choose to cast Bounce or Trip Laser if I can just simply put another Vortex? Or, why would I use the Shred Mine if Pox is more efficient in stripping armor, without jeopardizing my Vauban build? Honestly, I don't think that these abilities help our combat engineer at all. Vauban lacks survivability and a way to make his Bastille the ultimate trap, so we should focus on those. What I'm proposing is making his first ability an exalted utility gun that has the ability to disable or debuff enemies. Why a gun, and not just traps or grenades? Simple. It's because guns are way effective than putting mines, as you don't have to wait for the enemies to step on it, and you can shoot at a safe distance. In addition, it's way easy to program compared to creating a throwing animation for grenades that works. I'm just throwing my 2 cents here anyway, and I can suggest whatever I think would benefit Vauban the most, right? So anyway, this new exalted utility gun will have an ability wheel similar to Minelayer. Vauban can cycle through 3 different rounds: corrosive rounds which lower the armor of enemies caught by the blast, EMP rounds which disable guns and robotic units, and lastly, Tesla rounds which allows you to shoot electric current that chains through enemies. This utility gun will have a mini area of effect for both corrosive and EMP rounds, allowing its debuff to affect a couple of enemies that are close together. Also, since it's an exalted gun, it will drain energy over time. It's more like Hildrin's exalted pistol, but it doesn't deal damage. Instead, it's more for utility purposes. Lastly, I did choose it to be an exalted gun so Vauban can use it efficiently. You can press the ability to activate it, then use your mouse wheel to cycle between rounds. Then, you can just use your aim and shoot button afterward. The second ability slot should be used for survivability. I have 2 ideas for this slot. One is an ability called Adrenaline Shot. Vauban will induce himself with adrenaline to increase his survivability in the field. When activated, it gives Vauban damage reduction, speed and increase health and shield. The amount of bonuses Vauban gets from this ability depends on how much power strength you put on him. Or, this ability slot can be used to summon Osprey, which is like a custom sentinel for Vauban, which gives him damage reduction, shield, and health. Now Bastille should be kept as this is his signature ability. For those who don't know, Vauban was named after a French military engineer whose defensive doctrines accept the fact that even the strongest fortification would fall, and that fortresses are just made to exhaust enemies so you can easily defeat them. If we take this to consideration, then we could say that Bastille perfectly suits this idealism. However, since we are not just referring to one ability alone, instead, we are referring to the frame Vauban having the same idealism, so it's best that we just consider Bastille as one of those fortifications. Instead of removing it, we may give it some buff like removing the cap of enemies that can be suspended by Bastille, or we can add a feature which will most likely stop projectiles from passing through. In fact, repelling Bastille can be buffed by allowing all incoming projectiles to be repelled, but it would require a little tweak to its animation to make it believable. Now his final ability can be kept also, and just give it with lots of range so it can fare against those insane pull and group abilities, or Vauban could have a new ultimate ability. Vortex can be added, or simply make it as our first ability, and call it Vortex Rounds, wherein you can shoot rounds that pulls enemies in one location. Of course, there would be a maximum limit of rounds you can shoot. After that, we can replace his ultimate ability with something else. We can make Vauban more offensive by giving Vauban a massive nuking ultimate ability, or we can give him another sort of fortification to make him a stationary defender. Or, we could both give Vauban offense and defense in one single ultimate ability. We could give him a player-usable turret, like those Grineer ramparts with massive fire rate and damage. But for me, the new ultimate ability sounds appealing. In any case, I don't mind playing Vauban differently for as long as he will have a versatile and fun kit. So that's it. I hope that you have learned how to play Vauban at his current state with this video, and I do hope that you like my ideas for a Vauban rework. We all know that this frame would receive a rework soon, and I'm pretty excited about it. For now, let's throw in a bunch of ideas to Digital Extremes to help them build a better and fun kit for Vauban. In fact, you can start by simply sharing your rework ideas for Vauban in the comment box below. Thank you so much for watching. Squad Leader signing off.